'Cause like a winter tonight, I thought I would always have light. The quick flash that you gave to me, so dark I could barely see. Looking
from wherever you are around the world, welcome and thank you for joining me. I am Dr. Carlos. This is the Circle of Insight. Today's a special edition as we look at the mass shootings and why are they going on. With me today is Dr. Gharadjedaghi, also known as Dr. G, clinical psychologist. And we're going to take a look and a listen to why are these things happening. So let's find out. Thank you, Dr. G, for joining me.
Sure, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
So, Dr. G, what is going on here? I mean, this is surprising. What's happening here?
Well, why is this surprising at all? I'm not surprised. Why
You're not surprised?
I'm not surprised.
I don't know. I guess it's because it seems like it'd be such a... it's an anomaly, I guess, in a sense. It doesn't always happen.
Well, hold on. You said it doesn't always happen. But how many times has it happened over the past year or two?
That's a good point. I think it's about 40 times we've had shootings in a school environment.
That's my point. Why are you surprised? I mean, that's the thing. What I'm surprised that people are surprised. Why are you guys surprised? It is staring us in the face every single day, if you think about it, because the gun problem has not been solved in this country, at least to the extent that it's readily available. So without an imminent solution for gun control, that's one factor that's in place. People can get hold of guns. Then mental health issues have not been solved either. We know that millions of Americans are suffering from depression, anxiety, relationship issues, psychotic problems, personality disorders, developmental disorders, you name it. Security systems have not been implemented at every single school or college. I mean, it's just too cost prohibitive unless, again, you come up with another new tax, probably, tax the whole country so you can put every, security system in every school. But then you have to go beyond that. Then you have to also put security systems in every single mall and security systems in, at crossroads and cross sections and in the streets.
Well, let's talk about that.
Everywhere.
We talked a little bit about that before the show. You made a great point because you were talking about familiarity.
Right.
Because we were discussing, we don't see many mass shootings in malls.
Malls, okay.
But we do see them in schools a lot.
Yes.
And you were saying something really unique about that, and that was because they're familiar with that environment. What do you mean by that?
Well, yeah, what we were discussing is the question of, like you're saying, why is it not happening as often in malls or, let's say, office buildings, or public places like parks, right, or convention centers and things like that. And however, it is happening so often in schools. Well, we have to look at those parameters that are present. First of all, you have a volatile population, right? I mean, all these people, they're young people. All these shooters.
The
shooters and the victims.
18 to 26.
They're in the teenage, young adulthood, where we know there is lots of hormonal issues, relationship problems, self-esteem and self-confidence issues, isolation, lack of, if you will, appreciation or validation or reciprocity going on that are immediately linked to a sense of accomplishment and, again, self-esteem of a young person, because young people heavily rely on these reflections that they get from the society. And that's why you see this in popular culture, social media, and the rise in narcissism, due to social media or in conjunction with this rising social media that we have seen over the past 10 years with the younger population, putting so much emphasis on their looks and on the comments that they get from people that they know, right? It's part of the identity of a young person. So you have that volatility, right, that's going on with that population. Then you have easy access to guns. Then if you throw in some kind of a disturbance, because No, let's be clear about this. Someone who goes around and shoots 10 people, they're mentally challenged, if not ill.
Do you think 99% of them probably
100%?
shootings? 100%.
100%. How can you justify say somebody's not mentally ill? What else? I mean, what else? What is wrong with them if not mentally ill?
Do you think most of them are delusional? Like, remember the James Home from Colorado in the movie theater? That was a movie theater.
Movie theater, right.
And I don't think he had any attachment to the movie theater that I remember.
Yeah.
But he seemed completely delusional.
Well, he had some kind of an attachment to that, let's say, culture or environment or that fantasy of a movie theater.
I think the movie was Batman, and I thought he was the Joker.
He was the Joker.
That's right.
So he had that relationship. So they always have that relationship, and that is the answer to your question, as you mentioned. How come so much on campuses and college, environment? Because if they are, and it's different in this case, I believe this recent person, we don't even know his name, right?
They're trying not to say it, so we're not going to say it either. There's another gentleman they're trying to keep the fame down this time. They're trying to change their tactics.
Right.
This is another question for you, because what they're trying to do is they said, look, a lot of these mass shooters want the attention. They want this legacy of living on forever. And the sheriff came out and said, nah, we're not doing it this time. Don't show the pictures. Don't put the name up. They did a little bit, but very fleeting. So we're trying to do the same thing. But does that really make a difference? Do they look at it this way?
Long term, I would say yes, on a long-term basis, in terms of what impact it does on the culture, on our collective consciousness. The kids that are growing up, if they are less exposed to that glamorization of a mass shooter, then generally that wouldn't exist in their vocabulary or in their worldview or idealism. So going back to, let's say, whoever that guy is, I heard that this person is not a student of that college.
And last I just read this afternoon, he just enrolled. That's all I heard. Yeah. So he wasn't even a member.
He wasn't even a
student. Yeah.
But most cases where the mass shooter is actually a current student or past, like maybe alumnus or alumni, then there is a sense of familiarity. They have been going to that campus for many years or many months, many days of the week. So it's almost like a second home, especially for students. What's their second home? The first home is where they live. The second one is where they go to library and study and hang out with their friends. I mean, these friends become their extended family. And if within that, let's say, outer circle of this extended family, there is a lot of emotional problems going on, such as, let's say, they have resentment, they have grudges, they have some sort of, conflict with other people involved, then it is natural for them to really take this grudge or vengeance out on the extended family. And a lot of people take it on the immediate family.
That's absolutely true, too.
They kill parents, they kill sisters, they kill brothers, siblings, right? Or children. They take it out on the immediate family. If not the immediate family, the extended family. So it's not surprising that someone who would have some kind of a mental problem, whether it is a officially diagnosed mental illness or not, it's clear that there is some mental problem going on. And then easy access to guns. Some by means of association, some kind of a business that they have with a group of people that they hang out with on a daily basis.
That's the interesting thing, is a lot of these shooters tend to be isolated.
Right.
And it seemed a couple of his posts that they were reading, and this is all information I just got offhand, secondhand, so I don't really know how accurate it is, but they said some of his posts said that he was really upset at the world. He couldn't make friends.
Right.
He was aggravated. We know I think it's the Beck, the three different types of depression, right? The world, other people, and myself. And it seemed like he had all three of them going on. He was angry at the world. He was angry at not being able to make friends. Right. I didn't get to the third one, so I don't know how he felt about himself. But it looks like it's self-evident.
The cognitive triad.
Cognitive triad, exactly. He isn't great. But I couldn't figure that out. But it looks like the vengeance is there, but it's almost like a vengeance that they've created in this kind of delusional world. What I mean by that is they don't have friends. People are not communicating with them for whatever reason. Right. And then they automatically just flip them into enemies, into the delusional world. You don't want to be with me? Well, I'll get back at you.
Let's turn this around by actually revisiting the word isolation. You see, they're not isolated. Isolation would be you are on an remote, the kind of
Remote island?
yeah, remote island or deserted. That was the word I was looking for. The deserted place where you don't have access to information, right? That would be isolation. They are not isolated. They are shunned and ostracized. That's a different story.
And that hurts, like you said, for young
That
adulthood.
hurts. You see, they know everything about the society. Society doesn't know much about them.
That's a great point.
So they are observing this whole society, and some of it is great, but some of it is fake. Some of it is meaningful, and some of it is meaningless. Now, if they have some kind of a mental disorder, such as, let's say, like you mentioned, a depressive mind or severe depression, clinical depression, then certainly in their distorted view, the mind wants to almost create this self-gratifying as well as congruent match between what's going on internally as well as what's going on externally. So the mind does something that's very paradoxical, but it just fits the depressed mind, where the perception of the outer world would be selectively distorted to match the inner feeling of a person who is depressed, right? So certainly a person who is really not isolated but only shunned and is absorbing all this information would only look at the fake side of it. They would look at all this, let's say, social media or people hanging around. They are close with each other, but they're not including me. So something must be wrong either with me or with them.
It's actually worse than being isolated. Because isolated, you have no idea if people like you or not. Here, you're getting the interpretation, at least maybe in a delusion or not, but you're getting interpretation they don't like you.
They don't like you.
Because they're shunning you.
That's right. If you have that depressed mind that tells you certain negative stuff, and it wants to almost reinforce the problem in this case, which is, for instance, if it is hopelessness. If this person has thought, well, it's hopeless, the world is not going to change, everything is grim, everything is awful, everything is negative. And through their distorted view, they also absorb all this information from outside. Well, somehow they have to put an end to that pain. A lot of times it happens through suicide. Why do people kill themselves? Because there's too much pain going on. They're not killing themselves necessarily because they would enjoy killing themselves, right? There's no joy in killing oneself. It's like really having to put an end to a pain, internal pain. Or if that is not doable for some reason, if the mind convinces a person that, well, you deserve better, why should you kill yourself? And it distorts the viewpoint to a point where you can blame others and even find evidence for it based on whatever conclusions that somebody can, rational thinking that somebody can come up with. And you have a gun next to you, and you have some plans, and you see, you have some fantasy, because it is being reiterated out there with all these novels and movies, and again, part of our culture, that the way we talk to each other, sometimes killing, then they're going to go kill some people to end their pain.
We have about 3 questions in 10 minutes.
Hi, welcome to Adelante. This is Adelante Recovery, and my name is Yvette Kuglin, and I'm part of the staff.
Adelante Recovery Center has helped people in dual diagnosis for 5 years. We accept most PPO insurances and provide luxury accommodations and 24-hour support. To speak with an admissions counselor, call 1-888-242-4450.
A lot of time we don't even know what's wrong with us, and sometimes we need to get away to figure that out. So if you want to go for a little retreat out in Corona Del Mar, which is a confidential location, we're here to help. So we're only a phone call away. Thank you.
We're going to go on a different angle here.
Okay.
Actually, we'll skip parents for a second. We're going to get there in a minute, because I want to talk about parents of the shooters, and then we'll talk about parents of the victims as well. Okay. I'd love to see what kind of advice you can give the parents of the victims that lost their children.
Yeah.
Because this is really out of their control.
Right.
It just happened. It was an amazing shock. I can't even imagine it. But let's look back at, he had about 13 guns, I think they found so far, which definitely tells you, and I remember correctly, Oregon has really strict gun control laws now over the last 2 years. So I don't know if he's had these guns prior to the gun control laws or after. I don't know what happened there. 13's a lot. And now trying to figure out how can we test these guys, or girls, whatever it is, but how can we test them to know, no, we can't give you a gun. You have something going on. Yeah. But let's look back at the parents now for a second. The parents of the shooters, the people the parents of the shooters.
Yeah.
We were talking about it. A lot of people are trying to figure out, how do we stop them?
Yeah.
You mentioned some things. Maybe it's gun control.
Yeah.
Maybe it's putting police or security at a school or whatever area they're usually going to shoot. The other issue, some people said, well, look, can't the parents notice something?
Mm-hmm.
But when I looked at it from a psychological viewpoint, and I want to see what your theory is, of course, of this, it's complicated for the parent. It's their child. And I don't think, as a parent, they want to admit or even think that their child can do something so horrible. What's your take on that?
I think there are two components to that. You see, if first of all, the first component I would regard as a survival value, which is every parent, I mean, again, I'm not surprised that most parents wouldn't look at their children as potential killers, even with mental
would not
problems.
Look at them that way.
They would not.
Yeah.
And that's that survival value, because if you think about it, if it was the other way around, you had paranoid parents going around just at this slight moment that they see something wrong with their kids and they think, oh, that could be the next shooter, then they will start limiting the options of their children. And there's no end to that. It can escalate to a point that, everything could be wrong.
Slippery slope.
And it's a slippery slope. And so it wouldn't be conducive to really expanding the option or maximizing the opportunities that really a child needs to grow up. So it would really stifle a supportive system. So that's the survival value or the benefit that this type of a bias has. So every parent is naturally biased. There's no question about it. And they ought to be biased. And that's just the way the mind works. I mean, first of all, when you're exposed to someone, despite their worst characteristics, you're also, because you live with them, you interact with them, you're also exposed to their good characteristics. Especially if there's a parent-child relationship, then there is something else coming in. That's the second component, which is hope. As a parent, you have the best hopes for your children, that despite the 1% that they may mess up, the 99% will win over, or even vice versa. We have many parents who see 80% flaws in their kids. But because there's a 20%, they hang on to that 20%. That's the hope. It's the hope that their child will come out of that misery, if you will.
Sure.
Based on that 20%, not based on the 80%, maladaptive behaviors, because they have that conviction that my child is good. I've seen the good in this child. So that just makes sense. I mean, there's no other way around it. However, I would propose that anyone, any parent, whether it is a parent of a shooter or the victim, that at the onset of some problematic behavior, that they look further into that and seek professional advice.
Would you advise the parents, let's say the shooters for now, would you advise the parents to say, look, if your child doesn't have many friends, is that something to look at? Johnny's always home.
Downplay. That's the danger I would see, is a parent's tendency to downplay the negative sides that they see and sweep it under the rug and look over it and say, oh, it's just temporary, it's a phase. No, they're gonna come out of it. No, it only happens a few times, things like that. Basically rationalizing it, justifying it, rather than taking it seriously. And again, not going to the other extreme to take it too seriously, we would then start punishing their child. Why are you always in your room and something must be wrong with you, blah, blah, blah. No, but they should take it seriously that, wait a minute, there's some kind of a phase going on, whatever that phase is, but it needs serious attention. So why don't I reach out to everybody and everything? I can go talk to the teachers. What's going on with my child? Do you see any change in their progress at school?
Good.
I can go talk to their friends. How come you guys don't come over more often and things like that? Increase the chances that the child could interact with others.
It makes it a little harder when they're 20. Because the teachers at school might be a little more complicated for him to go.
Sure.
But
they're above 18. Yeah.
So if they're 20, 21, they don't have any friends, you're noticing that. So your advice is to maybe start approaching the child too and just talking to them and finding out, maybe not even mentioning that they don't have any friends, but maybe talking about what's going on in life. How are you doing? Are you okay? You feel, and kind of figuring out where they're at in their head?
Absolutely. There are a couple of things. Number one, a parent who may feel restricted in their options of reaching out or creating a different environment for their child. If they're living in the same household and therefore are more exposed to the dilemma, then there are a couple of things they can do. Number one, they can seek therapy for themselves, to again, get expert knowledge and advice on how to be a better parent, how to be a more supportive parent while I'm living with my child, because there is apparently a reason that they live together. But even if they don't live together, if there is a reason to be concerned about, again, you can be a parent who is concerned and who wants to do something about the situation. Because, why? Not necessarily because you're related by blood. I don't really believe that much into this concept of, let's say, a genetic connection. I believe in the concept of an emotional connection, because a parent and child have a rapport since birth. I mean, there's 20 years of rapport that these guys have with each other.
Good point.
So you could capitalize on that connection, that bond. Why not? So that brings me to the second option, which most people nowadays who are troubled or living with these dilemmas ignoring. And that is the option of opening up a dialogue with their children.
Yeah.
Connecting more, spending more time with each other. And that goes to parenting skills. If a parent would ask me, well, I have tried everything and I don't know what else to do, believe me, you haven't tried really everything. You have tried everything that's in your mind.
Go ask for help.
Go ask for help. Go find out what can be done given the age, given the personality, characteristics, environmental factors, genetic factors. Again, seek help. There's nothing wrong with seeking help. So there are many options available. Let's say parents of shooters. The problem is they don't know they're parents of shooters until it happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't want to put the blame on them either. I mean, this is a very difficult situation. I'm just trying to give parents out there at least a heads up.
And I don't believe they're blamed. They're to be blamed.
No,
okay?
not at all.
They're not to be blamed for the shooting. But I think if anything, because if you want to blame a parent for the action of a grown-up, or a grown child, you can blame the whole society.
That's right. Let's look at the parents of the victims. The last couple of minutes here.
Sure.
What kind of advice would you give them? I mean, this is an amazing trauma. I can't even imagine my child being killed like that.
Yes.
What kind of advice would you give them as a clinical psychologist?
Counseling. I mean, that's very sad to hear if you're the parent of a child who has been murdered, and it's tragic, and like any other loss. I mean, there's two components to that. One is loss, the other one is injustice. Okay, and there's real injustice. I mean, there is perceived injustice and then real injustice. For instance, if my 90-year-old mom or dad dies, there's not much of an injustice in that. I mean, that's just part of being human. We know we're gonna die.
Cycle of life.
Especially cycle of life. If my parent has lived their lives fully and they're at the end of it and they die, so there's no sense of injustice, even though there may be a perceived one. Why is God taking my mom now? Because I need her and things like that, but that's perceived rather than real, and almost not fabricated, but there is not much of a justification or reality to it. But certainly the sense of loss is very real. And so parent of a child who has been shot prematurely died. They weren't supposed to. They were unjustly or unjustly treated by someone else. So not only they have lost their child, but they have lost a lot more than their child. The sense of safety, security, and justice in the world, in the community, in the environment, in the country, in the political system, in the school system, in everything. And these two are serious, painful experiences that need to be dealt with. There is no short-term answer to it. Therapy, counseling, seeking help, talking to friends and family, to pastor, to any other person that you can confide in, to strengthen yourself in times of adversity and shock. You have to regain some kind of a control for many reasons, and reasons are abundant. Could be a personal reason, because your child wouldn't want you to hurt yourself just because they're gone. There may be other children involved that you're responsible for. There may be an opportunity of using this as a motivation to change things that are wrong about this world. There is personal reasons that many people find and have, and that's sacred to them, which is fine. There's existential reasons. There's so many spiritual reasons. You shouldn't, harm yourself just because you lost someone. You have to learn the lesson. So whatever reason there is that a person has to do some self-care in order to remain strong in times of adversity and in facing this loss is very important, which we generally know as grief counseling. So grieving and grief counseling becomes very important. And then certainly the other aspect of seeking justice, seeking an answer, using this as a momentum.
That's important for the
Absolutely. That is, if you are dealt a blow in life and from a very unjust source or do it unjust parameters, then, and if you don't do anything about it, you lose a sense of meaningfulness in life. Mm-hmm. So it is important you do something about it to regain a sense of self-agency, control in a good fashion, control that helps you put yourself back together. That goes back to existentialism,
Sure. Yalom
and the game and Frankl and so forth. So we got to have meaning in the things that are happening around us.
It's actually a good book by Viktor Frankl as well.
Yes.
Do you think it would help during these times?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Dr. G, we ran out of time.
Okay.
But thank you so much. I appreciate it very much. I know you did as well. We give our condolences to all the families out there that lost those loved ones in this tragic, tragic event. We pray for you and we think of you. We hope you enjoyed this show and hope we provided you the insight that you needed to move along as we continue to provide insight to help you live a better life. Talk to you next time. And also catch our web TV show, Circle of Insight, on therapycable.com.